Hi everyone, welcome back to What They Don't Say. It's Shannon, and today I want to start with a story. And so it's a little bit of a longer one, so I'm going to need you to get cozy, buckle up. If you're on your way to work, that's fine. Keep going to work. If you're at work, honestly, just leave work. Tell them that you have something going on. I need you to be cozy for this. I need you to settle in. I've got a nice warm coffee with me. I'm in a cozy sweater. We're just going to be going. We're going to be talking. We're going to be chatting. Let's get into it. In 1988, there was a girl named Patricia who had a dream of going to the Olympics. She had been training to compete in the heptathlon. The heptathlon is a 7-event sport that has a bunch of different events from track and field. So think like hurdles, shot put, high jump, things like that. A few weeks before the Olympic trials, she realized that there was a chance that she might be able to qualify for the heptathlon as well as the high jump event by itself. She began traveling around, sleeping on friends' couches, trying to attend small meets to qualify for the Olympic trials in high jump. During those meets, she did make the qualifying minimum mark. 4 days before the Olympic trials, she was told that her marks did not count. The following days, she called and called and called and begged and pleaded and basically made a case for herself to compete at the Olympic trials in high jump. As the Olympic trials went on their way, within the first day of competing in the heptathlon, she was in 5th place and then end of the day in 7th place. Ultimately, it was very clear early on that she did not qualify for the Olympics in the sport that she had came there for. She took 2 days of rest and began preparing for the high jump event. There were 2 rounds for the high jump event, and surprisingly, she made it to the finals. But she showed up to the event and nobody knew who this girl was, so much so that she wasn't even put on the list of finalists. Her family didn't even know that she had made the finals. The final day of the Olympic trials begins, and she is still a nobody. Nobody knows who she is. Nobody cares to know who she is. Everybody is focused on themselves. She jumps over the bar backwards in the finals and clears 6 feet, 3 3/4 inches, which was an Olympic trials record. And then the bar went a little bit higher, and Trish cleared the bar at 6 feet, 5 inches, which was another Olympic trials record. This was as high as she would jump at the Olympic trials, and one person would go on to jump 6 feet, 6 1/4 inches, and they would win. And she got 2nd place. She had qualified for the Olympics, and the 3rd place girl came up to her and said, "Who are you? You should know that you're making a lot of other high jumpers mad since you came out of nowhere." But she didn't care because she had qualified for the Olympics, the fucking Olympics, okay? This is like the athlete. This is the greatest, biggest thing that you could possibly do in athletics, at least in my personal opinion. So she begins continuing to train for the Olympics, and there's not a whole lot of time between trials and the Olympics itself. For the past little while, she had a boyfriend who frankly sucked, if we're being honest with ourselves. And he wasn't that great. And she was realizing that, she's going on to do great things at the Olympics. And she basically made a deal with herself that if her boyfriend fought with her on the day that she was leaving to go to the Olympics, that she would break up with him. Sure enough, he fought with her, she broke up with him, and she got on a plane to fly halfway across the world. Now, for the Olympics, you have a training camp a couple weeks prior to the actual Olympics to sort of get acclimated to the environment that you're going to be competing in. So the 1988 Olympics was in Seoul, Korea. The training camp that took place a little bit before was in a neighboring city a couple hours away. At this training camp, Trish was absolutely loving it, really soaking it in, newly single at the Olympics, surrounded by incredible athletes. And she began to see this guy almost every day. And she kept running into him. She noticed that he was particularly thin and he was a runner, but he was tall and he had tan skin from being outside and dark brown hair. And they began chatting a little bit and they began having a little bit of fun. She learned that his name was Pat and he was a long distance runner, and she really began to enjoy his company. However, the training camp comes to an end and they get transported to the Olympic Village, and she assumes that she will never see him again. Now, for context, the Olympic Village is huge. The Olympic Village is where all of the athletes from all of the different countries stay. So there are thousands of athletes and thousands of different places and rooms. And it's not like back in the 80s, they had Find My iPhone, Find My Friends, or anything like that. They didn't really exchange much information at all. So she just assumed that she would never see him again. She's at the Olympic Village. She's in her dorm. She gets a knock on the door. She opens it. Sure enough, it's Pat with a bouquet of flowers. They both compete at the Olympics, and frankly, neither of them do great, but they have come out of the Olympics with each other. After the Olympics, they began dating. Pat had won 8 consecutive USA cross-country championships. He was sponsored by Nike. He was a 2-time Olympian in 84 and 88. He was an Olympic alternate for multiple years. He was a freaking athlete. Trish was also an athlete. She began competing at the Masters levels as she got older, and she set a world record for the Masters that stayed for 6 years. These two were powerhouses, and they decided to get married, and in the late 90s and early 2000s, they had 2 children. As you can imagine, 2 people who are Olympians choose to have babies. Do you think that they're going to put their kids in sports? Yes, you would be absolutely right. They put their kids in sports and were willing to let them try anything that they wanted to do. All that was important to them was that they wanted them to do a sport of some kind. And so these 2 kids were raised in an Olympic household. These 2 kids were raised with Olympic torches on the wall and medals on the wall and stories about the Olympic Games and going to Disneyland afterwards and meeting the president afterwards and being sponsored by Nike. These kids were raised in a household that prioritized athletics and with parents that poured into their kids' athletic abilities because it was something that was really important to them. It was not all of them, but it was important to them. And their son ended up falling into fencing. If you're not familiar, fencing is a sport where you have swords and you like stab each other, but you're not stabbing. It's like a very technical sword fight, I would say. Their daughter fell into figure skating, which is quite literally the most opposite sport to track and field that possibly exists. The first time she put on ice skates, she was 18 months old. And by the time she was 6, she was training almost every day and some days before school. Their daughter continued to do the sport every single day for years and years and years. Throughout the years, she began to grow, and obviously there are natural changes that take place. Her body changed a little bit, her sport changed a little bit. Things just were developing over time, but more than anything, she still had dreams of being a great athlete. She realized that maybe she wouldn't be an Olympian, but she could still be an incredible athlete and follow in the footsteps of her parents. When their daughter turned 18 years old, she really began coming into her own. She was developing who she was from a values perspective. She was gaining confidence in her athletic abilities. She was getting really good and really consistent in the sport of ice skating and starting to see that this really could be a full path for her. Obviously, she had spent her whole life dreaming of it becoming a path for her, but this was when reality and, the rubber was really starting to meet the road. And then in July of 2019, she broke her ankle and tore some ligaments. To her, this was one of those things that, gosh, this is horrible, but it's a setback. It's not a career-ending injury. It's just a setback. She'd come back from injuries before. And by October, she was back on the ice again, coming back and recovering from the ankle injury. Now, if you know anything about sports, you know that when you're recovering from an injury, it is way more work than when you are just healthy, right? You have to go to physical therapy. You have to warm up more. You have to cool down more. You have to be much more mindful of how many reps you're doing in your sport and how much overload you're putting on your body to make sure that you don't re-injure yourself. You have to be very demure, very mindful, one might say. And so October, she gets back on the ice. She's kind of struggling to get her stuff back. And then in November, she's sexually assaulted. And all of a sudden, she's struggling to get up in the morning. Although she has a newfound rage in her soul that for a couple weeks sustains her into working harder at the rink, it begins to crumble her from the inside out. And all of a sudden, she stops showing up to the rink. She starts blaming the fact that she's not showing up to the rink because her ankle hurts and because she needs a PT appointment, when in reality, she's just struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Within 4 months of being raped, she's looked at as a skater who's just burnt out. She's looked at as a skater that doesn't really need to have lessons anymore because she's on her way out of the sport. She's looked at the person that used to be, at one time, an incredible athlete with potential and a future. And now she looks lazy. She looks like she doesn't care. She looks like she's just kind of ready to move on with her life. In March of 2020, things are so bad with this girl. COVID hits and all of the rinks shut down. She decides, you know what? This is my time to be done. I can't do it anymore. I don't have the energy or the capacity to do it anymore. She stops skating. She sends an application to CU Boulder to go to college somewhere else so that she can move out of her home and start a new life. And she never returns to the sport of figure skating. She never becomes an Olympian. She never competes internationally. From the outside, it looks like she injured her ankle, came back, and just couldn't quite get healthy again. On the inside, it looks more like she injured her ankle, she came back, she needed to have 110% in the gas tank. She was sexually assaulted, and she had nothing in the gas tank every day when she woke up. Therefore, she had nothing to give to the sport that she loved so deeply. You might have figured it out by now, but this is my story. Those people, Pat and Trish, those are my parents. I came from 2 Olympic parents. I grew up with a brother who was incredibly athletic and incredibly competitive. And I too wanted to be an Olympian. And I'm sharing this because I want to talk about what sexual assault does to careers and education and athletic opportunities and futures of people. And I want to talk about what it's like to find a new normal after all of that. And I want to talk about why it's okay to let that new normal exist. For a very long time, I thought that I accepted this idea that I used to be the ice skater. I used to be the girl who was the figure skater in class. That was me. That's how I introduced myself. That's how other people introduced me. And the other day I was with some friends and we were having a game night. We're having a couple of drinks. We're hanging out. And I really thought that I had been completely good and past this thought of like, yeah, it was just a shitty end to my figure skating career, but it is what it is. I thought I had moved on, like I had bigger fish to fry. And then the other day, I'm hanging out with my friends. We're having a game night. We've had a couple drinks, and all of a sudden we start reminiscing on our like high school and early college talents. One of my friends shows a video of him in his choir from high school, and we're laughing and we're thinking about how good he is. And then everybody says, Shannon, can we see some videos of you ice skating? And I'm like, yes, of course. So we pull up some videos of me ice skating. And I'm watching myself and I'm thinking about how I just wasn't quite at the caliber I wanted to be and how I was really close, but I just wasn't quite there yet. Like I hadn't reached my full potential in skating. Like I just barely missed it. I felt like there was this window that I was beginning to step through and I got dragged back by the fact that I was sexually assaulted. And I'm sitting there just thinking about how much better of an athlete I could have been. And afterwards, I'm just crying in my boyfriend's arms about how I will never, ever know what sort of athlete I would have been had I not been sexually assaulted. And it's a hard thing for me to admit because I don't want my rapist to have all of that power over me. Saying that he is the reason that I quit my 16-year-long career of figure skating that feels crappy to me. That feels like he owns me. That feels almost like skating was so dependent on what I was capable of and the work that I put in. And to just say that somebody could strip me of that feels like I'm giving him way too much power. But a part of me really does feel like it's because of him. And I want to make something known. I don't necessarily believe that I would have gone to the Olympics. From a very young age, I had the dream of being an Olympian. And as I got older, I became more realistic with my expectations. And I began to see that, okay, I might not have Olympic level talent, but I think I could have international talent. I got 7th place at nationals. Like I think I can compete internationally. And maybe one day those internationals could maybe turn into the Olympics. But I had began in my teens to really settle with the idea of, okay, I might not go to the Olympics, but I could still be a really competitive high-level athlete. And I never expected the reason that I would quit my sport to be something other than myself. I never expected that I wouldn't have any more gas left in the tank. If you've ever done athletics in a somewhat intense way, you know that. And you hear it from your coaches, like dig deeper, do more. If you really want it, you'll do it. Like those were the phrases that were repeated to me. And between the time that I was somebody, I want to be like before sexual assault, like VSA and then ASA, like BC, all that stuff. That's kind of what it feels like. But before my sexual assault, I was somebody who had a a massive capacity for hard work. I literally used to skate 6 days a week, and I would be doing work. I would be working out or doing something related to working out from pretty much 9 a.m. to like 4:30 p.m. every day, whether it would be ice skating or ballet or strength training or Pilates or sports psychology. Like my whole life was centered around being an athlete and exerting physical effort and challenging my body to its maximum. Because that's what high-level sports are. It's how much work can you put in and how much can you get out and how can you push yourself in a way to new limits to achieve new things. When you are sexually assaulted, there is nothing left in your gas tank to give. I couldn't brush my teeth. I was struggling to brush my teeth, let alone go rotate triple jumps on on ice with knives attached to my feet? Are you kidding me? There was no fucking way that was going to happen. Okay, I'm getting a little bit out of hand here. The point that I'm trying to make is that I don't think people realize how much sexual assault and rape can impact your athletic, educational, and financial future. I went from training 6 days a week at the Olympics Training Center, being a high-level athlete for hours and hours of my day, to struggling to brush my teeth and get out of bed in the morning. Those don't make sense. I'm not the only person that this has happened to. If you don't know who Chanel Miller is a author, a survivor. She is brilliant. She wrote a book called Know My Name. And if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. I'm not a big reader, but I listened to her book. It was like the first sexual assault book that I listened to after my experience. And it was incredible. It like helped me put words to my experience, and I highly recommend it. But during the court process, Chanel Miller ended up quitting her job because it was so emotionally overwhelming and traumatizing, and she couldn't handle going into work. Brooke Shields talks about how after she graduated, she really struggled to find acting work, and she attributes a lot of that to the trauma that she experienced. And I believe that there are so many stories that we don't know about potential athletes and CEOs and degrees in college that were stripped from people because of their sexual assault. And it is very unlikely that we will ever know the potential positive impact that somebody could have had on their college, on a sport, in a career, if they hadn't been sexually assaulted. And here is why. Sexual assault is a crime that happens in isolation, typically. Typically, when people are assaulted, it is behind closed doors, in a private place, sometimes in an alley. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in public, because it certainly does. But it is a crime that happens in isolation, and it's a crime that people tend to try to heal from, also in isolation. Because there is so much shame and blame and confusion and self-doubt and denial that takes place after this. And so when high-achieving people are sexually assaulted, and you know what? Fuck that. It doesn't even have to be high-achieving people. Just people who are operating as productive members in society and putting their talents and their energy and their effort into something, whether it be a college degree, an athletic career, a job, anything like that. And then they are sexually assaulted. All of a sudden, whatever energy that they were able to put into what they were doing is no longer there. Their body is not operating at a normal functioning level, because their body has been traumatized. Whatever energy they could put into pointing their toes as a ballerina, whatever energy they were putting into those Excel spreadsheets, whatever energy they were putting into those group projects, all of a sudden needs to be spent on keeping their body alive. Your body, after being sexually assaulted, thinks that like the world is fucking falling down because its nervous system is so overwhelmed that it's like constantly in survival mode. And so your body says, yeah, no, sorry, don't give a fuck about your figure skating jumps. I'm just trying to keep myself safe over here because I am feeling like I'm in a constant state of danger. And from the outside, all it looks like is somebody slowly withering away. It looks like somebody just doesn't care about their job. It looks like that girl is so controlling in her group project when in reality, she's literally just trying to control something in her life because everything feels so out of control. It looks like that boy who all of a sudden is getting thinner and thinner, and he's showing up to football practice and his coach is wondering what the hell is wrong with him? Why does he have no energy? What happened? He was our star player, and all of a sudden he can't put any effort into our drills. All of a sudden, The soccer player can't run across the field because they're not nourishing themselves, because they're not sleeping, because they are struggling to go through everyday life, let alone these things that require immense amount of energy. It's always important to me that I paint a clear picture of the reality of sexual assault. And in the past, Lauren has said, like, hey girl, we need to give them some more positives. And I'm with you. And I'm about to get into that in just a second. But I just think it is incredibly important and crucial that we understand the way that sexual assault can creep into every single area of your life, the way it can impact your career, the way it can impact your relationships, the way that it can impact how you view yourself, the way that it can impact how you feed yourself, how you think, how you feel, how you function in society. And I think that it's so important to me because I didn't realize or understand that that's what sexual assault meant. Sexual assault doesn't mean that you're assaulted and things suck for 48 hours and then you're like, okay again. Sexual assault means that an event happened and the impacts of that event will creep into every single area of your life. It is a ripple effect on all of the people you care about, on all of the activities that you do, and all of the ways that you spend your time and energy. With that being said, sexual assault does not mean that you are never going to achieve anything. Sexual assault doesn't automatically mean that you're never going to make any money. It doesn't mean that you're going to not graduate from college. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have successful and beautiful relationships. It just means that it's frankly going to be a new normal that you have to find. And when I say that, it always pisses me off. I'm like, hey guys, what the fuck? I didn't choose this. What do you mean that I have to live with the fact that I will never be a figure skater ever again? Like, I will never go to the Olympics for figure skating. I will never compete internationally for figure skating. Like, I will never be that. And I get a lot of questions from like friends and family, and they'll say, do you miss ice skating? And I always say that I don't miss the physical toll, even though a part of me does, because it's cool to be able to push yourself that much physically. There is nothing in this world that will make me feel more beautiful than ice skating did. And I have to live with that fact. I have to live with the idea that no matter what area of my life I will be successful in the future, it will never be ice skating. I have to be okay with that, because if I am not, I would crumble. I would just hate my life, because I sit and I always wonder what sort of athlete I could have been. But the reality is that knowing the way that sexual assault impacts you, I couldn't have been the same athlete as I was before. I have to really meet myself in a place of grace and understanding and forgiving, of knowing that who I was the day before I was assaulted is a very different person than who I was the day after and who I am now. And that person could no longer push themselves to that physical capacity, at least not at the time. I have to wholeheartedly and fully accept and know that quitting that sport was the right thing for me to do in that time. Because continuing to show up every single day to the rink and beat myself up over not being able to do what I used to be able to do was not going to be productive for my mental and my physical and frankly, my spiritual health. And it is so crucial that you are able to meet yourself wherever you are after your sexual assault, and with a sense of understanding and believability of what you've gone through and understanding of the weight and the depth of it, to know that it is okay to walk away and move on and step into the new normal and the new you of whatever the world has in store for you next. And I had mentioned a little bit ago that it's really hard for me to think about the fact that like this person stole this from me. Like, I don't want to give them that much power. I think sort of a reframe for me, and maybe a reframe for you, could be that this person harmed me, but I am choosing a new path that aligns with my new normal. So yes, this person was part of the reason that I was debilitated for months on end, but I am the person that is choosing a new path for my new normal. And I have agency in that. And that is a really freaking awesome thing. My new normal for me after ice skating was being a college student. I had never once in my life just been like a student. I missed school dances. I missed hanging out with friends after school. I missed free periods. Like, I missed so many of those fun, normal things. in life because of my sport. And it's not a thing of, oh, Shannon, you chose that. Obviously, I did choose that. I wanted to be an athlete. Like that's part of the sacrifice. Anything you do in this world, you're sacrificing something else, right? How you use your time. If you are choosing to do work, you are sacrificing maybe spending time with friends or relaxing. Like everything is a choice, and you are always choosing something over the next. And so with skating, I missed out on a lot of quote unquote like normal kid opportunities. So my new normal was I'm going to be a college student. I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to eat crappy food. I'm going to stay up late. I'm not going to even work out. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want, because before my schedule was controlled by a sport and now my schedule is controlled by me. And that was one of the ways that I sort of regained this reality of who I am and who is the new Shannon. When I'm saying that you have control over your future, I'm not saying that you aren't allowed to still have bad days. I'm not saying that you are now strong because you were sexually assaulted. No, you were strong before. It's just coming out now. That dog in you, it's coming out now. Those tears, you've had them. This just unlocked a new part of you. And it's a constant balance between who would I have been had I not been sexually assaulted? And it doesn't matter because this is who I am now. But I still want to acknowledge this thing that happened to me, but it's also not all of me. Like there's so many different parts of this conversation that I feel pulled in the directions of. And I think it's just allowed to be all of it at once. I think it's allowed to be something that was devastating and frankly, like really fucked up my skating career. But it's also something that led me to a life of talking about it. Like I wouldn't have a sexual assault podcast had I not been sexually assaulted. You know, it's a complicated thing because I'm grateful for this, but also like, what would I have been had I not been sexually assaulted? Would I have continued skating? I don't know, but I never would have also gotten to know the person that I am now had I not been assaulted, which is also like, I didn't want to be assaulted. You see where I'm going. It's this constant pull of all these different directions. And I think it can just all exist at once. And I think that that's okay to let it all exist at the same time. Like it's just different parts of you wanting different things and feeling different things and believing different things. And it's all of those different parts make up you and your experiences and who you are becoming and who you want to be one day and who you will be one day. Something that this made me think of is I made a TikTok about this, and it's kind of silly, but also kind of not. Sometimes when I'm really struggling with something that is not related to sexual assault, like maybe I'm working out and I do workout classes. That's been my thing recently. And it's just been the best way for me to get into the gym. Otherwise, I don't freaking go. Apparently, I need somebody to charge me $10 if I don't go in order for me to go to the gym. But hey, whatever works. Keep your body moving. It's really good for you. Anyways, if I'm working out and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I have 25 more seconds left in this set. I'm dying. There's no way I can make it through. My first thought is, Shannon, you were raped for longer than 25 seconds. It was hard being raped. That's way harder than these, bicep curls. That's way harder than these RDLs. You can keep working out because you were raped for 25 seconds. You were raped for more than 25 seconds. And so it's like this strange thing of like using my sexual assault in moments of other pain to be like, girl, if you can make it through that, you can make it through this. I don't know if anybody else does that. That was just a side note, something I thought of. Okay. Anyways, I want to say that being sexually assaulted really made me realize how much something can change who you are. And like, I don't know who I was before I was assaulted. And especially, a large percentage of sexual assaults take place between like 18 and 25 years old. That is not to say that they don't exist outside those windows, because sexual assault 1000% does. But this is just when a high concentration of sexual assaults take place. There's a lot of reasons why that is. And, part of it is college. A lot of sexual assaults take place on college campuses or around and near college campuses. Another one is you're launching. You're either about to launch, into adulthood, into a career, into your life, or you're like in the middle of launching, like you're figuring out your job situation and things like that. And within this space, it's very hard because if you're sexually assaulted in this time, like you're already becoming somebody new, like you're already learning who you are and coming into your own. And if you're sexually assaulted, it's like, wait, pause. Am I this new person because of this thing that happened to me? Or was I going to go get over here anyways? Like, is that already who I was going to become one day? I don't know. And so like, that's something else I kind of grapple with is, okay, the person I was before I was assaulted, like, for one, I have a hard time remembering, like, did I struggle with decision making? I think I struggled a little bit, but the way I struggle with decision making now is unbelievable, unbelievably challenging for me to make small decisions. Was I an angry person? Because what I remember is that I never really used to get angry. And now I can get really angry and have like deep, deep stomach, hot rage. And so it's like, okay, but does that just happen as my frontal lobe develops? Are those things that are natural? I don't know. So where am I going with this? You're like, Shannon, I'm coming here so that I can learn things from you. I'm just talking to you. I'm just chatting with you about this, like these thoughts that I grapple with between being, am I different because I was assaulted? Am I different because my frontal lobe is more developed? Is it both? I would guess it's probably both. But either way, it's where I'm at now. Kind of similar to the way that I had to meet myself in this space after being sexually assaulted, like in those first couple months, and like knowing and really looking inwards and realizing that I can't be the athlete anymore. I just can't. I cannot do it. And I have to meet myself with knowing that that's okay. And the same way now where I am this person where maybe my frontal lobe's more developed, or maybe I've got some more anger in me from my assault, but either way, I need to meet myself in this space and continue to work in the direction of who I want to be and what I want to do with my life. And so, this anger that I feel, I have to address it. I have to go to therapy, and I have to sit there with my therapist and talk about how I want to pull my hair out when I can't figure out what pants to put on in the morning, and how I want to be on the floor crying like I'm a 6-year-old child. And I have to talk to her about how I'm afraid of bad things happening all the time. And that is part of just meeting yourself where you're at, is looking at yourself and who you are, and looking at the good and the bad and the ugly and the hurt and the joy, and going to that, like really sitting with that and saying, wherever that is, whether it's because of what's happened to me or because of just my body changing hormonally, I am going to meet myself there, because that is what you deserve. And if you don't meet yourself there, and if you continue to just live your life and like all of these things, there might be all of these collateral things that are taking place from your assault. And if you just sort of let the collateral happen, but never look at it and acknowledge it and question it and be curious around it and think about it and feel it, it is going to consume you and become you. You have to meet yourself where you are in order to become who you want to be and do what you want to do in this life, especially after you've been sexually assaulted, in particular after that. I think it's very important after you've been sexually assaulted, or even after other traumatic experiences, to redefine what strength looks like for you and where you are. And this feeds into this idea of meeting yourself where you are. But like, strength for me used to be working out 1 million hours a day. And now it sometimes looks like just getting out of bed and stepping onto my porch. I used to have a lot more days where I really just struggled to do anything. Like I really, really had a hard time with just getting anything done. I've sort of reached a point where I am farther along in my healing journey. I don't spend as many days in bed, and it's been actually a long time since I've spent like a whole day in bed. But you might be at a place where strength for you looks like getting out of bed, where strength for you looks like making yourself a meal, where strength for you looks like doing your homework in bed. And with this, it's really easy to start to criticize yourself and be mad at yourself of like, why can't I do what I used to be able to do? For one, beating yourself up like that isn't going to help at all. For two, you are still doing something that is strength. It's just changing shape a bit. You can get back to running triathlons or, being the bad bitch at work, okay? But right now, your strength needs to look different. And in order to get back to whatever you want to be doing and to define your new normal, you also have to redefine what strength looks like for you and where you are now. Along with redefining what strength looks like for you, you have to separate you from what somebody did to you. If you're somebody who's in this sort of new stage of life where you're trying to figure out what's next for you, and maybe you've put to rest whatever you did before and you're doing something new, I want you to find new ways to express this new you. I want you to try something different. And this, I know it's scary, especially when our nervous systems are still like, wah, going crazy after being assaulted. But whatever you did before, your body is still going to remember a piece of that. So if you're an athlete, maybe you have that movement, you have that like mastery of skill, that sort of strength, like physical strength built up in you. Or if you were really good at school, you have that ability to learn, that desire to learn, to take notes, to absorb information. All of that still very much exists. Like I keep saying, it's going to look a little bit different, but what other things could you channel that into? So, for example, I might not be ice skating anymore, but I could do dance. I could do adult ballet classes. Or if I just want something purely physical, I can go to a gym and work out. And I know that sounds kind of boring when I put it like that, but it's the reality of the situation that you can find those fragments of joy and those skills in other forms. But you have to try them. You have to go out and try them. And it might take a while. Like I didn't figure out that I liked going to workout classes until literally a year ago. So it took years for me to finally get to that place. If you really enjoy learning, but you're really struggling in an educational setting, what about learning a new skill? What about learning how to crochet? What about learning about stars? Like find something that isn't in school. Like find something different that you can use to awaken all of those old skills in you that are deep to your core, but in a new form. This idea of the new normal, it's really hard to come to terms with the fact that you are not going back there. You are not who you used to be. The fact of the matter is that you are different after you're sexually assaulted. But what's so important is that you bring those parts of you that you really love into your next stage. As one sort of final thought, and I realized I didn't say like thought one, thought two, like this was kind of discombobulated, but that's just how I think. Sorry, I might have ADHD. I don't know. Do I struggle immensely with reading comprehension and doing tasks? Yes, I do. Anyways, where were we? My last thing is I have 3 affirmations for you. And these aren't affirmations that I use for myself, but when like thinking about this episode, this was something that I wrote down. If you're somebody who's really taking a step through the door into your new normal, I think that these are 3 little affirmations that could be helpful for you. And I'm planning to also say these affirmations for the next couple months leading into the new year, as I'm also continuing to find a new normal. Okay, here they are. 1, I am learning how to live with the new version of me. I am learning how to live with the new version of me. This new body deserves gentleness and care, not performance. This one's a little tricky because especially if you are a performance-based person, you might think, Shannon, that's too frickin' soft. That's why it's gentleness and care. Gentleness means treating yourself with grace, and care means giving your body what it needs. What your body needs is nourishment and movement and peace of mind and joy. So gentleness is showing yourself grace, and care is giving yourself what you need. This new body deserves gentleness and care, not performance. And finally, this one's my favorite. I can still have a meaningful life without being the person that I was. So yes, I plan on repeating those to myself over the next couple months leading into the new year as I am continuing to find my new normal. And I hope that you do too. I love you guys so much. Just as like a very slight life update, I've been really struggling with making episodes. I'm not sure if you could tell by the fact that there hasn't been as many of them. I'm trying my best, okay? I'm really out here doing what I can to make things for you guys. So I really appreciate your patience in the meantime. While I'm still continuing and like sort of, chugging along, trying to make episodes and content and merch and everything for you guys, keep emailing me. I mentioned last episode that I do have a backlog of emails, but I'm getting to them. I'm responding to them. I love seeing your emails. I read every single one of them. And even if it takes me 8 months to get back to you, I will eventually get back to you. If you're thinking, Shannon, emails, what are you talking about? I didn't know I could email you. Yes, you can send us an email at whattheydon'tsay.com. Go to the contact us page. You can send any message to us from there. You're amazing. You can do anything that you put your mind to, and your new normal does not mean that it is any less than your previous normal. In fact, I would argue that if it's your normal of today, it's way better than the one from yesterday. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you on the flip side, and cheers.